actions now. See, the Nigerian Communications Commission dismissed claims of a telecommunications tariff hike, allegedly set to take effect. That's for January 2025. But let's get an outlook now for the telecom sector in 2025. Joining us is Mr. Oluwole Begunde, is a research director at Insights, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Compliments of the season.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I remember earlier, we discussed the first one that came out, that the NCC, gave approval, for the increase. But apparently that's not happening, according to new statements from the NCC. Quite interesting. I'm sure there was jubilation when the news first came out, yes, for tariffs, but I don't think consumers will be jubilating.
No.
Right. So how do you see it?
I think it's something that has to happen eventually if we need to save the industry. Let me give you a backdrop. So the telecom market as we know it today is about 25 years old. And pre what we have now, we used to have Nitel that was quite dysfunctional, epileptic in services. So the government at the time thought the best thing to do was to liberalize, to regulate and privatize Nitel at the time. So that opened the floodgates for foreign investments to come in. Capital from India, from Zimbabwe, from South Africa came into the country. And that was what built what we have today. The MTNs, the Airtels, Etisalat at the time, Nine Mobile. Then local money started coming in from Globalcom. That's what has built all of this today. And it is an investment, hoping for profitability. The challenge is that when the market starts to shift and they cannot really be profitable anymore, that becomes problematic. You look at the books of the likes of the MTN, Airtel, they've been declaring losses last year, and most likely happened again this year. That doesn't appeal well for investment. So for us to save the market, to make it profitable again, the NCC has to allow that price or tariff increase. It's been a long time coming, almost for 11 years now. Has to happen. You look at the market.
So you're telling me so far there's not been any kind of increase, for text messages, phone calls, data, nothing at all?
Not significant compared to what is happening in the market. Let me give you a context again. So in 2013, if MTN wanted to buy a server, or any of the providers wanted to buy a server that cost $1 million, that is 150 million naira. If the same server was to be bought today, it would cost them 1.6 billion. That's almost 1,000% increase in cost for them. And we are paying naira and kobo for our services. How do they manage that? Cost of diesel has gone up in the last 10 years. Inflation in 2022 was about 17%. Last year was about 26%. This year about 33%. It's no longer sustainable for the industry to go like that on the same prices. That is why they are fighting for that increase in tariff. And honestly, if the industry has to be saved, it has to happen.
And I'm sure, some consumers will say, well, so what? My salaries haven't gone up either, at this point. And we've seen what has happened with inflation, currency devaluation. Some might say, what? I think the telecom industry should just suck it up at this point.
It's a good argument, but it won't fly. Look at the airline industry, for example. You want to buy a ticket to the US on any of the international airlines, it's high. You have to pay because it's foreign denominated, right? The same thing, the banking sector, every other sector has adjusted. So the telecom sector has to be allowed to adjust. If not, again, it's a P&L thing, profit and loss. If it doesn't make any more sense to invest, then money stops coming in. This year, MTN Nigeria was the highest revenue generator for the MTN group. It's nosedive to number 2 now. What that means for them is that in the group level, Nigeria becomes deprioritized into investment. So what happens next year if they keep going down, declining, Nigeria becomes going down in that pecking order for investment. If that doesn't happen, as we just heard earlier, then they will be shutting down services in different locations where they think they don't have the necessary IOI to support their business anymore. That's what's happening.
Right, and looking at the industry at this point and, seeing the pains, that some of these providers are going through, do you think, with what we've heard from the NCC debunking at this point, maybe it's just a prelude to what's going to happen, and at some point the NCC will say, okay, right, you guys have to go ahead now. You see that happening?
My opinion is that there's a lot of back and forth political will up and down to ensure you're doing it at the right time. because of course there's a lot of bills involved, there's politics involved also. The admin, current administration has to ensure that they're doing the right things so that they're not seen in a bad light by the people. But again, we're trying to run almost a capitalist industry in that telecom space. That's why it was regulated and liberalized so that money can come in and build it. Now, if you want to sustain that level of growth in the market, it has to be profitable for money to still come in. The big problem is the fact that a lot of our tech is imported. And that has to be Forex. So you can't have Forex keep growing exponentially and the prices consumers are paying locally stays the same for a decade. It can't hold for too long. And that's why the telcos are almost literally shouting and saying, look guys, help us.
So break it down for me. They don't get this tariff increase. What's going to happen in 2025?
I suspect that quality service will decline further. Because again, it's P&L. They're not charity organizations. I suspect that in areas where they will deprioritize areas that are not, in terms of ROI, the best for them. Because the cost of diesel, the cost of staff, cost of all of that, that's all happening in those kind of areas.
Right, so if I try to make a call, it's not going to go through?
It might not go through, depending.
If I'm trying to browse?
Quality might just decline. Starlink, for example, I read today, again, is trying to increase tariff again from about 38,000 to 75,000. So it's not a local thing. It's not a Nigerian thing. It's not that MTN is greedy or Globalcom is greedy. It's global. There's so much happening in the market, and the math is not mathing, as the case may be. And that's why everybody is like appealing to the regulator to help ease that pain a bit. Although, in my opinion, again, I don't think tariff increase will necessarily take care of everything.
Is that the silver bullet?
Exactly. It will just provide some relief for about a year or two. The major thing is the Forex thing. Because if Forex keeps rising and we keep importing our technology, whether hardware or software, that problem will still be there. So the long-term solution is still to grow local tech, the skill sets locally, create tech hubs that can support what we use locally so that we're paying Naira for it and the customers are paying Naira. So there's a Naira to Naira thing, not Naira to dollar as it is right now.
Right. All right. So, going into 2025 at this point, there are a lot of expectations, but some say there's still a bright spot, for the industry, regardless of this back and forth with, tariffs. Do you share the same optimism?
Yes. Nigeria is it's the biggest market in Africa. So the numbers are there. Like it's just population. 5G, for example, is not even tapped. We have 5G in the country, but the market is still very green. So the market is there, but you need investment in those areas because it requires a lot of skill, expertise, infrastructure to deploy those services that you and I and other consumers want to buy into and pay for. That is why there's a lot of need for capex to flow into the country to build that. And the capex is flowing in for the meantime outside the country. So that Forex exchange is there, almost poking holes in all of their arrangements. But in terms of opportunities, vast opportunities is there. There's a reason why Starlink is keen about Nigeria. They've seen the holes, they've seen the gap, fixed data, they've seen that there's a market here to be played. So the likes of MTN, Globalcom, Nine Mobile, and the Rex can plug those spaces. Probably for 5G, there's a lot of opportunities. IoT is not even untapped. It is not tapped yet. So
what are you saying for 5G deployment?
So there are a lot of things that can do, use cases that can be done with 5G. Virtual reality, for example, is a big one that can be deployed. Nigeria is a big, there's a fan base for football. Everybody's watching the EPL, the Champions League.
Everybody's streaming.
Exactly.
At this point.
Now, 5G gives you a better opportunity to do it over VR. So I'm in my room, I have a VR headset on, and I'm like in the stadium in Europe, Nou Camp, Bonnabal, or Old Trafford. It's a different experience that 4G or fiber can give you. 5G can give you that. MTN has 5G, Airtel has 5G, Mafab has not deployed. But if any of these guys can pull up this, it's a game changer. Because there's a massive youth population that love football. I mean, the betting industry in Nigeria is big today. So football. So people can watch VR, in high definition, anywhere they are in the country, and it's like you are in the stadium in Europe. So that's just one use case. In healthcare, the same thing. Even in broadcasting,
right?
If there was proper 5G,
right,
I could be in my house doing this interview, and viewers would think I was here.
And I could broadcast too from home.
Straight. So there are a lot of opportunities that are there that are on tap.
I just hope my dog doesn't, come in at some point. Well, I guess, so much to unpack there. 2025, just a few days, at this point. We're technically, almost there. It'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out, the back and forth with the NCC and most of these telecom operators. But it's always great unpacking this with you. Thank you so much. This is Oluwole Begunde, is a research director at Insights. Always great having your perspective here.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year in advance.
Happy New Year in advance. Wow, incredible. 2025 coming just like that. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head straight to the markets. Just stay with us.